Hey, welcome everybody to Rad Pod and Chill. My name is Heidi Kuda. I told Jim and Hi-Fi I needed one more minute, but they didn't give it to me because they like to be on time. LOL. Just got to put my other earring in so don't look insane. Hi guys. So anyway, I guess I'll just be a one earring person for now. I'll be a pirate. So much is going on. And I think tonight I want to answer the question that if it's not okay to, scream fire in a crowded theater, why is it okay to radicalize tens of millions of people? So that is a question I would like to pose to Jim because he's been asking that question a lot lately. Jim, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I mostly today was absolutely infuriated by this fucking Trump judge, who gave two of the most violent and destructive human beings on the fucking planet, half their sentence. Not only that, the judge bragged about how he's never given a downward departure this much before. How he, in his entire fucking career, won't ever give 15 years off a sentence. And the one fucking case he chooses to do it is when the goddamn Capitol is attacked by a bunch of Nazis? Really? Look, it's just it is the poisonous fucking radiation left over from the Donald Trump administration that we've got hundreds and hundreds of these fucking psychos in our judiciary. And for the next 2 generations at least, our judiciary is going to be fucked. We are not going to be able to get justice in this country because there's a bunch of people who are literally collaborating with a Kremlin puppet sitting on the bench. Hundreds of them, all put in there by Donald Trump and fucking Leonard Leo.
Yes.
I'm almost done.
No, go for it.
So when we fucking, start talking about Proud Boys who attacked the Capitol building, right? Where hundreds of law enforcement officers were injured and murdered by a giant crowd of people who were there because of lies, because of Donald Trump's lies and Mike Flynn's lies and fucking Steve Bannon's lies. Yep. And none of those people are in prison.
Yeah.
None of those fucking people are in prison. And the people that they do put in there, the guys in charge of the shock troops, get special treatment, career capping special treatment for this motherfucker. So forgive me if I'm not doing much chilling today, but I'm thinking about the prosecutors, not to mention the people who were injured and murdered and traumatized on January 6th, but the prosecutors and the people who went through hell to get those fucking Nazis in prison. So forgive me for being a little bit heated today, but I've been getting it right and left from a bunch of fucking stalkers, and I've had it up to here with them. And our justice system is not only letting Nazis off with the pat on the wrist, they haven't done jack shit about the actual problem. Thank you for coming to my very angry TED.
Well, I started there. I wanted to start there for a reason. because at one point in 2018, I wrote an article about how the most dangerous man in America was Mitch McConnell. The reason I wrote that is because of the remapping of the judiciary that was occurring on his watch. I mapped out the people that were getting placed into positions of power, the jurists, and it was overwhelmingly unqualified white males with not enough experience and who were more like right-wing activists, extremist right-wing activists, and they were proper judges. And I think that we have seen that on the Supreme Court. Marty wrote a letter to the Betty Dangerous editor today where he basically talked about the friends of Clarence Thomas and how, there were disclosures that he revealed today. And the only reason those disclosures were made is because it was forced by reporting from ProPublica. So to your point, Jim, there's no need at all to apologize for being upset, because I think that what I was thinking about before we went live is that the world is now, in America, it's divided into two camps: those who believe in facts and are rooted in reality, and those who don't, or just don't care. I quite think it's that simple. When you have somebody like Roger Stone, who clearly 2016 Stop the Steal was his op, 2020 his op, and there he is in his film saying that he did not, that Trump had lost, collaborating with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. And then he goes on garbage TV or garbage whatever and starts saying AI. It's like, this is somebody who doesn't care about facts, lives in some sort of alternate reality of post-factual space. And he's, talking to a group of people, possibly millions, who share his lack of concern about what is factual and what isn't. I'm heartened, because that's a long sentence, but I'm hoping that our Justice Department demands that the sentence be extended. Did you see what Jeff Charlotte was posting today from Joe Biggs? Did you see what he was showing? If that's not a domestic terrorist, I don't know what is. Yes.
I would like to wander down kind of the history trail of Joe Biggs just for a minute, because the judge said something today which, while technically true, is not the truth. And Joe Biggs, he was making a big, huge splash on the scene with the Proud Boys during the Portland fights, right? When we had Antifa and the Proud Boys fighting in the street. And, that whole scene was really, really ugly. And I know a lot of my friends who are in Portland are celebrating today, although they also think that the sentence is bullshit. Because, again, Joe Biggs has a long history of doing this kind of agitation. Before the Portland fights and the Proud Boys, he was on Alex Jones, spreading conspiratorial nonsense. And he got to Alex Jones because his initial introduction was Joe Biggs' connections to the death of journalist Michael Hastings. So, yeah, he doesn't have a criminal record. He doesn't have paper, but he's got history.
Well, I think.
Can I just talk about Biggs for a second? Because a week before the insurrection, I wrote a thread that said, "Hey, if you want to punch Nazis, if you're Antifa, if you're anti-fascist, don't go to fucking January 6th. Do not go to DC on January 6th. How did I know that? Because Joe Biggs fucking told me. Because Joe Biggs fucking put it right there on Parler with 270,000 views. Antifa, if you're listening, come to DC and let's fuck it up, right? The only reason that he would do that was so that Trump could invoke the Insurrection Act and blame Antifa for their own attack. And so a bunch of us were paying attention, saw this, and we're like, fucking don't go, right? Because of Joe Biggs. Because Joe Biggs fucking told everybody, not just the right wing, not just the Proud Boys, told everybody, including the fucking FBI and the Justice Department, not to mention Twitter and all the other social media networks that let this shit go on, right? So if I'm a little perturbed that 3 years later, Joe Biggs is getting a candy ass sentence because of some fucking Trump judge, hopefully you can understand my frustration.
Absolutely. And also, while you're on the subject of, look, I'm anti-fascist, right? You're anti-fascist. Hi-Fi's anti-fascist. The greatest generation is what we call the people who fought the fascists. Antifa is something that is weaponized as an op, and that what Jim was just describing was him telling the people who actually care about democracy not to go on January 6th, leaving people like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers to only beat up on cops. But I think it's worth noting that it was Joe Biggs who said, we're going to look like you, we're going to smell like you. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, I don't want to assume people, know all the nuances here, because there's a lot.
Yeah, they said, look, we're going to dress up in black, just like Antifa. You better get down here and make sure everybody knows who's who. Right? They were open about what their plans were. They were open that they were going to be there to fight Antifa. And when they saw that it wasn't happening, they got more and more desperate as the days went on. It became more and more obvious what they were trying to do. And a lot of people contributed, but things would have been much worse. We would have had a constitutional crisis that I don't know how we would have gotten out of if he had any excuse to pull that nuclear trigger.
That was the plot. That was the plot. That was the whole point. Yeah, that was the whole point.
They still, to this fucking day, say it was Antifa. It was Antifa. So many of these fucking people. It's incredible how reality can. So I want to differ with you a tiny little bit, Heidi, because you said that we're split into camps of people who believe facts and people who don't believe facts. The people who don't believe facts think they're facts, though. That's just a slight difference, right? They're not. Almost all of these people are not out here like, ooh, I'm going to believe some bullshit about Antifa. They believe it. It's been put in their fucking mind. It's been programmed into their brain because they've heard people like Joe Biggs tell them over and over again that it's actually Antifa that's doing all this shit. I posted today, fucking Jack Posobiec is in Boston, like, oh, the Antifers are burning flags. Like, come on, who believes him? Who believes Antifa is out there burning flags? A lot of people.
Well, right? and here's a reality. Here's an example of reality. Who is being incarcerated for burning a flag? Who burnt a Black Lives Matters flag?
Well, that
right?
would be Mr. Tarrio.
Enrique Tarrio, who was all over the Roger Stone documentary, A Storm Foretold, by the way. So I'm just saying reality is.
So it's Biggs. Oh.
Hold on. I have to address this because it's a thing that bothers me and no one does it correctly. Everyone talks about Enrique Tarrio burning a Black Lives Matter flag, right? And why is that? Because that was the spectacle. That was the show, folks.
Right.
But the other thing he was arrested for was carrying high-capacity ammunition magazines in Washington, D.C., where it is illegal. How come everybody leaves that part off?
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Let's remember what happened, please.
So I'd like to show our first Dr. Ian Garner clip, and here's why. Because he's the one who has me thinking about facts and reality. Because we did a great interview with him earlier this week. He is the author of Z Generation Into the Hearts of Russia's Fascist Youth. We did a long form interview with him a few months ago. We just did a breaker with him because I am beyond outrage that the West is not doing more about the fact that Putin is trafficking children. And we're going to talk more about that. But after the interview was over, he said something that to the group that we are speaking of, that facts don't matter, reality doesn't matter. You can't fight against the alternate reality these people are in with facts. So Jim is right. They do believe it. They do believe it, but that's because they're, it's been some sort of invasion of the body snatchers presented with a fact. A fact. Guess who didn't get a mugshot a week or so ago? And guess who is not on the brink of being locked up? Hillary Clinton. That's a fact. That is a fact.
I mean,
we have a real crisis, and I'm not seeing the type of mobilization that we need to see in order to address it and stop it and hold those who are trafficking children accountable. And I've been told by fascist scholars that this is not something that has not happened historically, that it has. When there are fascist countries that overtake another country, they do steal children. And why is that?
I mean, there are two reasons. Firstly, the very notion of fascism is bound up with visions of the future. And it's very easy to look at Russia and think that the ruling ideology in Russia is all about the past, the Soviet Union, Tsarism, but it's not. It's about the future. Theoretically, it is meant to be about saving the nation today by adults and existing generations sacrificing themselves to somehow rejuvenate society and the spirit and thus create better future generations. And so the fight for children who are supposedly being twisted and distorted by what's variously called Ukrainianism, Satanism, transgenderism, homosexuals, Westernism, you name it, all sorts of isms, nothing makes sense, right? Idiotism is my word for it.
I love that.
It's all about children. And the other aspect of it is that fascism functions through war. Fascism constantly has to refight this war because regenerating the nation through sacrificing the self through war can never bring the returns that are promised, right? That is not a route to the utopian future. As we're seeing in Russia, life in Russia is immeasurably worse today than it was 18 months ago for many, many people.
Yeah.
Therefore, what do? Well, you have to fight another war. And what do you need to do to fight war? Well, you need bodies. You need bodies to turn into soldiers to fight for you. And so ultimately, when we think about the militarization of youth and education in Russia today, and indeed the taking of civilians forcefully from other areas, that is a means of feeding a war machine.
Look, the purpose of fascism, as the doctor said, is to make more of itself, right? To continuously gobble up power, geography, human beings, right? That the entire purpose of it. And there's no reason to believe that this fascist is any different from any of the other ones. And what all fascists do is brainwash people into adoring the leader, right? You either like submit or you die in fascist countries. That's the rule, right? And so what they are literally doing with Ukrainian kids is trafficking them out of Ukraine into Russia, child trafficking, the real thing,
Yep.
And they're brainwashing them. You're not Ukrainian. There is no Ukraine. You're Russian. You are Russian. Here, don't speak Ukrainian. You're Russian, right? If anybody has ever seen Roots and seen how they tell people, blast into your brain that you are this way, otherwise you will be punished. It's not a dissimilar thing. The Chinese do it with brainwashing as well with the Uyghurs and others.
Mm-hmm.
This is what fascists always do, and why is that? Because fascism is not an ideology anyone wants to live with, right? You are made to live with it. You have to. Nobody benefits from it. The only people that benefit are the leader. So it's always about fear, always about power, and always about deception.
Thank you for that, Jim. I think we should just go ahead and see the second clip. Save the end one for the very end, if you have it, Hi-Fi, because I think on
What
that note,
can we in the West do to affect, change and to stop this horror from continuing?
I think that the answer is, for now, that Russia shows absolutely no sign of changing its behavior in this regard, nor of punishing troops who break laws. And therefore, the answer is the same answer to almost all things. Ukraine has to win the war. Russia has to be driven out of Ukraine. And I know it's not going to be easy. I know it's going to be awful, but simply the calls to say, well, we will allow Russia to continue to occupy parts of Ukrainian territory. If you do that, even aside from questions of the war that may flare up again, Russia may attack somebody else, may re-attack Ukraine in the future, you are condemning the people that are living in those territories to what is conceivably an ongoing genocide. And that's wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And anybody who argues differently has lost their fucking mind.
Thank you for that. We could not have asked for more. I'll just end with something I also mentioned to Keir, that Yale professor Timothy Snyder, who wrote On Tyranny, said 100 years from now, should we still be around 100 years from now, the history books will reflect what they will write about during this time is the war in Ukraine, and that it's truly up to the West and to America whether or not this war is won. What can we tell Americans about why and how they need to support a swift end to this war?
We're really talking about the weirder ends of the Republican Party, right? Because support is much higher amongst Democrats. And you tell them this. You tell them that this is the cheapest and easiest way to make America stronger, without any Americans dying, without Americans having to fight. You win this war, you weaken Russia. You enrich America. Life is better for you and your family. That's a strong message. And it's very self-interested. It's not a nice argument to have to make, right? Because the argument should be moral and it should be ethical. But that is not an argument that is, I think, going to cut through the Republican audience.
so
Very smart. I wish I wish it worked that way, I wish you could argue them out of it, but anybody who's tried to argue with, and it's, by the way, not at all just Republicans,
yeah,
right? I mean, the number of leftists or anarchists or whatever the fuck,
tankies.
I'm not right wing, but but you have a Ukrainian flag in your handle, so you're obviously a Nazi, or you support the Nazis, or how can you be disinfo when you have? I mean, it's just like,
Oh, Jim, man.
it's constant, right? And it's from the entire horseshoe.
Yeah.
Why is that? Think about it. Think about how easy and ethical situation this is. A fucking tyrant, a communist who wants to bring back the Soviet Union, is invading with neo-Nazi shock troops a country in the breadbasket of Europe, right? And they cannot figure it out. Suddenly it's about the money. Suddenly it's about the $20 billion we spent. It has nothing to do with the fucking money. It's just about the programming. It's literally the programming they've gotten from Tucker and Newsmax and fucking 4chan and fucking Telegram and all this shit. This entire system of psyops, and that's what it is. It's not just propaganda. It is coordinated to create psychological change in mass groups of people. It's not leaflets getting dropped out of planes. Fucking psyops, which is why you can't talk people out of it. You cannot fight that damage once it's done. You have to lead them to it themselves. Sorry, go ahead.
I need a couple minutes to be kind of I need people to visualize for me, like, America as a society, when we really started having mass media, like television and radio started being pervasive everywhere. We had one big kind of information sphere, right? You had a lot of little local stuff, but the big news came from like the big three, right? ABC, CBS, NBC. And as we progressed as a society, this giant information sphere that we all used to live in has been broken apart into little bubbles. Now you talk to people who get their news from Rumble and OANN, and I had somebody tell me they use YouTube, and like, I don't think people understand how these sites are programmed to get certain outcomes from people, and the fracturing of the information sphere allows these separate realities, these disparate existences to be.
So we need a New Deal level way to fight back against disinformation. It's got to be on the scale of the New Deal. It can't just be a leader standing up and saying we're a target nation of disinformation. We need something that is on the scale of the New frickin' Deal, because people were dying in the streets during the Great Depression, right? Well, we have minds being, what's the word, Jim? Menticide? Mass menticide going on right now. So I think that is going to have to be the rallying cry. And I'm thinking that this group, through all our different networks, needs to spearhead that, put pressure on our leaders and Western leaders to think big and start to do something about it. If you can't, yell fire in a crowded theater, then you should not be able to, in a coordinated way, mass murder people's minds. And one other thing I want to say about that clip, Dr. Garner is up in Canada, and it made me very sad that, and I actually thought it was very smart of him for the people who aren't all the way brainwashed. But it made me sad to think that the way to get right-wing Americans to do anything was to give them self-interest, not make it a moral issue. I wanted to do the interview about human trafficking because it's a moral issue and the West is doing nothing about it. And his greatest argument, and I think it was a very good argument, I will try it on people who haven't completely lost their way, was to make it self-interest, the cheapest, most effective. Your kids don't go to war. Where America is stronger, Russia is weaker. It's all really excellent stuff. But it's like, why can't we morally say, that this is horrible, and we may as well see the last clip, because this is
Well,
some very.
Can I address that?
Please.
So look, conservatism, right, has always been about the let's say, I don't want to say sociopathic, but the more fiscally oriented, right? It's always been about tradition and and holding things back, right? And about money and not giving it away to people. We've always had that, and there has been to some extent a healthy relationship between those things, right? For a long time, and yes, the Republicans have always been sketchier, at least to the left, right? But we what has happened is that those arguments, the what used to be these standard sort of Republican arguments about fiscal responsibility and stuff, has been turned into the extremist version of that, which is don't not only shouldn't you consider emotion in this decision, but you should do the opposite of whatever the humane thing is.
Yeah.
It's not
right.
just don't be too
cold.
liberal. It's about no, you must punish, right? It's about taking those what used to be a relatively normal kind of back and forth between the more empathetic and the non-empathetic, and turned it into Nazis versus holy fucking shit, what is going on, right? And the thing that needs to be understood is that that's intentional. That and what you're saying about something on the level of a New Deal, some very large program, is right. But there's zero chance that's going to happen until people learn about this shit.
Yeah.
Until people understand it. At least the sane people left in the world, because the vast majority of people have no fucking idea. Even if they watch MSNBC or whatever and they're trying to be good, people, they watch mainstream shit, right?
Or if they read the New York Times.
Fuck. Oh,
What happened
I had
today?
to bring it up, man.
What happened? What did I miss?
So the New York Times on the opinion page said, "Here's a map of the key players."
Oh, yes, right.
A map of the key players.
That they left out the key players. Yeah.
A map of the key players.
Yeah.
There was no Eric Prince, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, or Mike Flynn. Anywhere on the picture. There's like 150 fucking little pictures of tiny little pictures of people. None of the tiny little pictures are any of the people who actually fucking planned it. A map of the planners. Fucking New York Times. Feckless, worthless garbage pit, man. I swear to God, it is just doing more damage than it's doing good at this point. Thank you for getting my blood pressure.
So I managed to forget about that. So I am. I always, part of the way I stay sane through all of this is I'm stay close to historians like Ian Garner and Ruth and all the great people that we interview on RadPod. But also I try to read as many books about history as possible. This just came in the mail today, and I'm very excited about it, because what this book reveals is appeasement never works. It never has. It never will. And anybody who's preaching like Neville Chamberlain, oh, we're going to have peace in our time. No. Jim has a very simple line about, punching bullies. It's like, you don't appease dictators when they go into countries and steal everybody's shit, and then also steal their children to try to create the next generation of brainwashed warriors. So I'm looking forward to reporting more about this. It literally just arrived, and I'm like just already savoring the experience of it.
So appeasement, right? Appeasement, by definition, grants the other side's existence, right?
Yes.
Grant that the fascist on the other side of your appeasement has a legitimate purpose in the world to exist. And if they're a fascist, a true fascist, they don't. Their only purpose is to destroy you, to absorb you, to wipe out everything you have, and if you don't comply with them, to fucking kill you. That's what it is. If you're appeasing a fascist, all you are doing is delaying the inevitable. And I'm not fucking interested. Fascists will never, ever, ever give up ground. They will only take it. I'm going to say it for the 100th time. Fascism does not stop. It has to be defeated. You have to beat it. You have to go on offense against it. You cannot play defense against an offensive force. It will not work. It is the physics, the math, the logic, whatever you want to call it, doesn't fucking work. You have to go on offense, which is why a bunch of us, everybody, the 50 people who are watching us right here, and 50 billion more people have to fucking get off our asses and start educating people about what's happening to their families, to them, to their country, to their planet. Because if we don't, we're just going to keep appeasing these fascists, the one in Russia, the ones that still haven't been fucking indicted or put in prison. We're just going to keep watching ourselves get gobbled up. Go hard.
I need to issue a correction. I just pulled up the New York Times pictograph, which is, lovely of them to put together. Mike Flynn, Roger Stone, Bernard Kerik, Alex Jones, Steve Bannon are featured in a circle called Fringe Players.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Is that because they're working the fringe? Who were the
That's
actual
disinformation. That's parasitizing. That's disinformation.
What is fringe? Because they're not on the outskirts, folks.
So
they're right
whoever
there in the middle.
It probably was 7 reporters and maybe a dozen people, and whoever put it together. A Storm Foretold is available for you to watch. You will see who plotted the insurrection, and it's those who they plotted with who were actually the front lines, who are actually getting sentenced, not the plotters. That's very distressing because they're still out there on garbage TV radicalizing people. So
doing the podcast, man, we watch them all the time.
So yeah, by the way, thanks for that, Jim. Thanks for watching the Republican debate. Thank you for what you reported on something today that it's just, I was like, thank you, Jim, for the fact that I'll never have to watch that. What was it?
Mike Flynn's interview?
Well, Mike Flynn's interview, shout out to our friend Dan who alerted us to that. No, it was something else. Yes, so it was something else. I'll look at your Twitter feed and remember it. But in the meantime, what I would like to do is talk about retired IRS criminal investigator Martin Shields' letter to me about Clarence Thomas, disgraced jurist Clarence Thomas, disclosing trips that were paid for by his billionaire friend Harlan Crow in his annual financial disclosure. And I want to say that he did take the opportunity to claim victimhood, saying the reason he had to fly around, on private jets is because the great unwashed was upset about Dobbs. Okay, sure. But I just want to point out that it was ProPublica that exposed that disgraced jurist Clarence Thomas took at least 38 destination vacations, including a voyage on a yacht around the Bahamas, 26 private jet flights, plus 8 by helicopter, a dozen VIP passes to professional and college sporting events, usually in the prestigious Skybox. That's the previous one. There's a new one today called The Greed of the Hollow Men. It should be the top post. So 2 stays at luxury resorts in Florida and Jamaica, 1 standing invitation to an Uber exclusive golf club overlooking the Atlantic coast. So Marty points out how Charles Darwin once said that a man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. So, and he also noted Oscar Wilde once said that one has a right to judge a man by the effect he has over his friends. Marty was feeling pretty profound. But it made me think that these hollow men that we report on and write about, hollowed out by greed, making decisions that benefit no one with empathy, all of us are paying the price for the greed of the hollow men. And I bring that up because I did a report over the weekend on the saguaros that are collapsing in Phoenix at higher numbers than usual. And the saguaro cactus is known for its resilience. They can live 150 years, and some of them even live up to 200. But because of the hottest month on record in July, and because the nights weren't cooling down, and because the monsoons didn't come, some of the saguaros are collapsing. And it literally looks like a crime scene, as I wrote, except without the, chalk outline. That's what's missing. And I quoted Wes Clark Jr., who was on RadPod a few weeks ago talking about this stuff, as saying, we either got to change or we're going to die. That's it. We got to change or we're going to die. We got to do a lot of things differently. We can't appease, back to appeasement. We can't appease those who are doing things that are not benefiting humanity, are not benefiting an empathetic world, and are not benefiting our earth. I wish I could remember what she said, but Greta Thunberg had like the freaking own of the day, the tweet of the day. Do you guys remember it? I think I took a screenshot of it. I'll try to find it.
No, but I did find something interesting. I think this is what you're talking about.
Look, let's say Jesus came down tomorrow, okay? Or aliens came down tomorrow. Does that mean like you're not gonna have to make your bed the next day? Does it mean you're not gonna need to like have breakfast anymore? Or like, your yard is gonna mow itself? I mean, they're all kind of childish fantasies of, I won't have to do anything ever again. And in one sense, that's correct. When you're dead, you won't have to do anything ever again. But it's not like a fantasy life that we want to have. Like, the only thing we can ever be certain of is that we're alive now. And no matter what your religion is, they've all got, they're all kind of trying to tell you how to live now. Like, the nature of sin isn't that you'll go to hell, like, when you die. The nature of sin is that if you do all these things, you're going to wind up alone in this life. And for social animals like human beings, that's hell. So if you look at like, what are the 10 commandments? Okay, people are like, if you've got somebody out there you were friends with and they're a liar and a cheat and jealous and they've committed murder and all these other things, are you going to maintain that friendship for the rest of your life? Of course not. They grow more and more alone. They grow more and more bitter and angry because they're alone. And to a large extent, this is the kindling of the Trump movement.
Yes.
Is these bitter, broken people.
Yeah, go West, go West, go West. So here's what Greta Thunberg said today, the great young environmental activist. Donald Trump just pled not guilty. In other news, the Hamburglar says he's a fucking vegan. Go Greta, go Greta. Oh my God, she's so great. She's so great. So yeah, Trump pleaded not guilty. Whatever. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was thinking about the whole, the people who the petroleum money behind the fringe players through the CNP and things like that. They're literally putting money in their pockets so that our grandchildren can suffer. I don't think people look at it quite that way. Maybe they should.
Well, Wes and I have not a difference of opinion, but he's right, and I also feel like what I have to say is valuable. He feels like people individually can't affect change, and that there has to be a global movement where the world will not look like it looks. We probably all won't have cars. We'll have to change things, right, to really survive this. And there's not going to be some magical technology that comes and saves us. But I also think that if we're going to keep demanding it, then the fossil fuel industry is going to keep providing it. And until globally people change their habits. I mean, what we're seeing right now with the war in Ukraine is just the example of the oil war economy. That just, it's the same freaking thing, except, with a added dose of fascism, evil.
It's not just petroleum though, right? It's also gold, it's cobalt, it's lithium. It is extractive industries, right? Attempting to, well, I mean, look what's going on in Africa. We just apparently are having another coup in Gabon. Now, yes, the president's family has been ruling that country for I forget how many, like 3 generations or something. But again, it's election time, and the military saying, "Oh, the election wasn't sound. We're taking over." I think that'll probably end up being kind of like the next thing we face if they gain power again. Is that this time they'll put more people in place in the Department of Defense instead of in November before January 6th. They're going to have people all the way through the chain, and this time they might win.
So I don't want to have. I don't like it when anybody hypothesizes about Trump fucking winning, or any of these people winning. I did, thanks to Monique Kamara, I did quote a citation in Medusa that basically said that in Russia, the Kremlin picks those who are running against Putin, much like I think we've been doing here in America, and they noted that they don't want anybody running against Putin who's under 50 because they don't want him to look old. And it got me thinking about how, we have a similar issue here in America where clearly the people that are allegedly running against Trump are only there to either make him look more centrist because they're so extreme, or like a far, like a Votnik, like RFK Jr. is there to peel away votes from Trump if he's supported by Bannon, Flynn, and whoever else that clearly
no labels.
So it's not. So I guess my point is that we have to really keep an eye on what's happening here as well. I think people, I don't know why well, I do know why. That's why we created the frickin' show. But people have such a hard time believing that they're being served, a Votnik soup. Shouldn't be that difficult by now. We saw it in 2014. We saw it in 2016. We saw. Yes.
It's difficult because they're fucking brainwashed, right?
Okay, yeah, it's back to where we started. Damn it.
But it's really hard, right? And I do it all the time too. Like, what is wrong with these? Oh, I have to remind myself, right? And I think it's important we all remind ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That there's a reason for them being insane. It didn't just magically happen that a third of the fucking country and hundreds of millions of other people around the world suddenly went batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't all suddenly decide that this alternate reality where Donald Trump is saving the children was real. They didn't decide that. Somebody fucking decided that for them. Somebody in Moscow, somebody in fucking Rhode Island where Mike Flynn lives, and Eric Prince. Like, it was decided for people what they were thinking. That's why they all think the same fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
What's so important to me is that people get that there are solutions,
Yeah.
but in order to even approach them, we have to get a wide understanding. To do that, we have to get the goddamn press on to start figuring this out, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the press would just break through their mental block, they would have some of the most important and juicy stories in U.S. history.
Right.
If
Right.
they would just get past the whatever their editors are laying on them, whatever bullshit is getting whispered in their ear, to make
Right.
them not actually pay attention, right?
So,
Oh, I'm almost done.
yep.
So we've got to get the press off their ass, and we've got to get the government, including the military, to answer us. Why aren't you talking about the warfare that's being perpetrated on the American people? Why aren't you talking about the tens of millions of casualties of war,
Yeah.
all of whom we know
Mm-hmm.
multiple of, who are walking around like fucking zombies?
Mm-hmm.
They're walking around like they're in shell shock from having been in World War II. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been traumatized
Yeah.
by psyops. It's
Yeah.
not complicated, but there is a built-in resistance to it for a variety of reasons, including that the Russians and the traitors who are collaborating with them don't want you to talk about it. So anytime anybody does, they get called crazy, they get called
Mm-hmm.
lunar, they get whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my whole thing here is just get people understanding some basic facts about where we are in the world, and the solutions will manifest.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to get people understanding it. Once we
Mm-hmm.
do, I believe that a lot of the rest of it will become much easier. Not
So
easy ever, but we've got to get past this wall of
less of a 5 alarm fire. So one hot tip, because I know that there are good people still working in corporate media, frustrated that they can't do the kind of work that they want to do. And one thing that I used to do is management goes on vacation. August is a great month, prior to Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You can sneak a lot of really important work on during the periods when management goes on vacation. Uh, the inmates are left to run the asylum, so to speak. And so I'm just saying, like, you can do this work. You just have to do it. You got to do it. I know you're capable of it and want to do it, but there are periods of time when you can do it. So I hope to see some real reporting in November, December. One thing also I want to say, because what Jim just talked about is related to the final clip from Dr. Garner. But I also want to point something out. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, historian of Italian fascism, author of Strongman, she wrote a very thoughtful piece on why Mark Meadows' mugshot haunts her. It was in her Lucid Substack today. And I quoted a very important line from that, saying that authoritarian history is clear about the loneliness of the devoted follower who finds himself out in the cold when the moment of justice arrives. The mugshots tell that story as well. So there is no greater example of that than Mark Meadows' mugshot, where you see a destroyed person who still must have some sort of semblance of some kind of conscience there, because he looks ashamed. And I think that we're going to be seeing more of that unless people have the nerve to stand up to this cult leader and others. And yes, Jim, you jumped up. What do you want to say?
Hmm.
Oh,
I just Oh, all I wanted to say when you were done, I wasn't meaning to interrupt.
No, I'm done.
Was that Ruth Ben-Ghiat is a national treasure, and if you're not following her, subscribing to her Substack, you're not paying attention at all.
Yes.
She is clear as a bell,
Mm-hmm.
and when I see her on MSNBC, it's like, okay, we have a fucking chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally like the only thing in the entire media landscape that gives me any hope is that they're willing to listen to someone who actually knows her shit and is willing to say it. She called Vivek Ramaswamy a psyop the other day, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, because that's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
Exactly what he is.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And
Hey,
you can't, hold on. And you can't,
okay.
and it's important for people, like that to use words like that, because we will eventually break the silence that needs to be broken.
Thank you for that. Yes, high five.
I would just like to point out
that you just sounded like "Welcome back, Cotter."
Oh. Mr. Cotter. Wow. Yeah, all right.
Throwback.
Nostalgia. No, the person paying for the psyop that is Vivek Ramaswamy is...
Oh, hi. Thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
Well done, high five. Well done. I thought it was good.
Well, I'd also like to point out, hold on, I also need to point out that guess who's back in Arizona? Blake AR-15 motherfuckers.
Oh.
Masters. He's coming back in Arizona.
Yeah, maybe he and Carrie Lake can, run their own PSYOP together.
Yeah, I mean, J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel, in case people don't know, gave Vivek Saraswamy $20 million. I call him Saraswamy because he took a whole bunch of money from George Soros, which I find endlessly amusing because.
And then what did he do?
Mike Flynn got a hold of. After I started saying it, Mike Flynn got a hold of Vivek and has been beating him with Soros, and I'm not sad.
Oh, what a world! So we have a very serious clip coming up from Dr. Ian Garner. So I would like 1 minute before we go to the, before we end this, to talk about it, because it's too important, and I don't want to end on a note that is as serious and tough as this. I want to hear you guys I'm sure you'll have some thoughtful things to say.
I have no idea what we're doing right now. I got caught up in chat.
Oh, I want you to run the last clip from Dr. Garner. Do you need me to give you
come on,
what?
Man.
You can't expect me to pay attention the whole time. What's happening?
I don't.
We have, as Heidi was just saying, we have historical precedent for this type of thing occurring. We had the Lebensborn program during World War II, and that correlates directly to what Russia is doing in Ukraine right now. But my question for you is, how badly has the media failed us when it comes to reporting this as not just something, oh, this occurred? No, it is an ongoing thing and continues daily. Why do you think the media, how is it failing? Why is it failing? What's going on here?
Well, I think individual reporters and individual newspapers from time to time have done an excellent job, as they do, but they follow a news cycle that is designed to attract attention briefly. While something is new, it's shiny, it's exciting. And then we move on to the next thing. And we know from our experience of war and communicating about war in general, the excitement of war wears off pretty quickly. And so it is hard to find ways to reach and re-reach audiences with the shock of the old. And we've seen our stories about these children. We've heard and we've seen some excellent reporting about them, but it's no longer new. It's no longer shocking. And therefore the conversation moves on to something else. Prigozhin's death being the perfect example, where this is a very exciting story for a week. And that too was probably already beginning to die down, and the media will move on. So it's more structural and about the way that media chases or has to chase to stay afloat stories and appealing narratives, even if it means long-term, they lack the focus and lack the motivation to really pay attention to some of the bigger issues that are going on in the background of the war.
It almost sounds like we're suffering
Right.
from media-induced ADHD.
Just wanted to say that even we in this conversation, we've been going, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes already, we've talked about the kidnap of children, the so-called evacuation of children, but we haven't talked about the murder of children. We haven't talked, and I apologize, this is going to be very bleak, so content warning. We haven't talked about the rape of children or the sexual abuse of children, the torture of children. And all of that has been happening and continues to happen. But even we, the people that are paying attention, are not talking about it, which just goes to show how hard it is to continually force yourself as a consumer of this sort of material to face what's really happening.